Hello, Brian, and thank you for purchasing a reading from me. I'm looking forward to reading for you. Sorry for the little bit of a delay, but I'm here to read for you today. I'm going to try to get both of your readings done today. I am going to refer to you as Brian, just because this is going to be a private video. You have my 100% guarantee that this link will never be shared with anyone, and if you don't share it with anyone else, it is literally impossible for anyone else to find it. Plus, I will never use a client's last name in a reading, and so it is incredibly unlikely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this will remain very private. And it feels way too awkward for me to call someone a different name or not be able to refer to you. Just way too strange for me. So I apologize, but I'm going to be using your name. So anywho, so your significator that I'm going to be using for both your operations today is operations. That doesn't sound good, does it? For both of your readings today, opening of the key lingo. Sorry, is the Knight of Swords, because you are a Gemini, and this card best represents that aspect. Okay, that personality rather. So I'm going to go ahead and invoke, ask your question, and shuffle, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's see what we have for your career Celtic Cross. Now, in your email, you had told me that you were sort of considering possibly changing careers, that you weren't sure whether or not you should switch gears now, but that you were looking for something that you felt was spiritual, in the sense that it was giving to other people, sharing with other people, that sort of thing, or doing good for other people, and that it would be not necessarily the one and only focus of your life and wouldn't necessarily drain you. So the bottom of your deck to start is the Six of Swords. Overall situation: Queen of Swords, crossed by Adjustment, crowned by the Hierophant, and grounded by the Eight of Wands. And preceding you is the Three of Cups, and in front of you is the Three of Swords. Your perspective is the Ten of Cups. External factors are the Princess of Cups. Hopes and fears are the Eight of Cups. And the one thing with using this deck is that I can never fit it all. The overall outcome is the Eight of Swords. So I'm going to try my best to keep all of this in the frame. Do bear with me. Okay. So what strikes me right away is that you are a pretty logical person, I think, in just the way that you approach things. I think that you are a pretty impartial person, and I think you tend to, sort of like I do, really weigh your pros and cons before you make a decision. However, that in some ways seems to be possibly stopping you. Just Adjustment being your obstacle. For me, that tends to represent that in some way, the decision that is in front of you as regards your career is sort of at a stall. It's a big decision that you need to make, but you are stuck in some way in making it. And I do think that there is... You also are good at, it says anyway, you're good at communicating your emotions well, and you're good at expressing them in a way that's clear. Not everyone can do that. Oftentimes emotions are so difficult to explain to people, and I don't know that you have that problem in this particular aspect of your life. I think that in terms of your career, you're very fair about it, and you're balanced with it, and you possibly, I'm not sure if you are doing something that is involved in communications currently, or But you do have some symbols of communication here that I see anyway. And being a Gemini, it wouldn't be preposterous to suggest it. As a matter of fact, with the Eight of Wands in your grounding position, I wouldn't be surprised if that's sort of along the lines of what you're doing now, is some type of, either marketing, even it could be, or advertising, or something that involves communication, and I think possibly even negotiating with people. And that, of course, encompasses a whole range of careers. But I think that's what it generally has to do with. It doesn't really matter what it is specifically. What matters is that you have connected to people in the past through that communication. The mercurial aspects that I see in the root of your cross and in your overall persona as represented by the Queen of Swords, that resonates for me with the Mercury in the Three of Cups that you have behind you. So you're coming from a place of having made good connections with people and really feeling connected to other people. You are a people person, so to speak, and I think that working with people is certainly important. Clearly to you, based on your desire to work in something more spiritual, and I do see that very clearly in your crown card with the Hierophant. I think you envision yourself in your heart doing something that's much more instructional and certainly spiritual. Is part of that, being more of a spiritual teacher, and trying to show other people whatever truths that you yourself have learned. I think that is really the direction that you're being pulled in. Now, the problem is that you don't have a whole lot of fire here. Your fire is kind of stuck in the Eight of Wands here. The Eight of Wands could also be indicating to me on another level that I'm also getting that your approach to this decision-making process is not consistent enough, or has not been consistent enough thus far. Either you've been distracted by other things and other goals that you've had to make and have had to take care of, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I don't know that you've really had much of an opportunity or much ability to really focus on it in some ways, and really invest more energy into it in a consistent way. If because changing your career is such a huge thing, and I get people who ask this question endlessly about career and whether or not they should change it. It's a very common question I receive, and 99% of the time the answer is somewhere along similar lines, and that it's important for us to remain practical. Being practical and pragmatic is not always a bad thing, and I think there's an element of that to you as well that is important in the Hierophant. I think that if you do end up changing careers into a more spiritual counselor, guider type of role, I think there's an element of practicality and routine and dependability that needs to be there for you. If you are going to do this, it can't be something that lacks structure. I think structure is important to you. Also, just mentally too, I think you like mental order. That's even on the bottom of your deck with the Six of Swords. Organization is inherent in the Six of Swords. What else is inherent in the Six of Swords? Just really order as opposed to chaos. The Six of Swords is really about organizing different conflicting forces and making them work in a logical way that is harmonious and not discordant. Okay. You also perhaps have not had great luck with where you are now, career-wise. I don't know if the company you work for or what have you has not always treated you fairly, and I think that that is also an element here. And in that light, adjustment can certainly represent injustice being directed towards you as well. Decisions and choices that have been made that were not fair or impartial, and that have perhaps caused you some issues, and I think perhaps could continue to cause you some issues. With the Three of Swords in your future, you will feel disconnected in the immediate future, and I think some of these choices that are surrounding you, some of these decisions that may be being made by people involved with your job that you do not necessarily have a say in. I don't know if you always agree with them, or if you will agree with them if they have not entirely come to fruition yet. I see you as feeling disconnected from those and feeling hurt by them, and not feeling bad, very poorly about them, kind of feeling icky about them. That's really the best way I can describe it. You do have, a card of sadness in your immediate future, and I think it's more just from a sense of feeling like things weren't done right, rather than really feeling particularly sad or tragic about anything, though there is the potential for that as well. Um, you do have an awful lot of Saturn, and so I don't know. I think you are. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before. It does kind of, the weight of necessity is apparent here in this reading. The weight of obligation and responsibility, and so there isn't a whole lot of room for you in this situation to really explore any of these new career choices that you may be interested in. Um, Now, part of the reason I think that you will feel poorly about the decisions that are being made here is because I think you feel like you like working where you are to some extent, as far as perhaps the people that you work with, or perhaps even work for. The Ten of Cups is your perspective, and on one hand, that does represent community and a sense of feeling like you're part of a group, and feeling connected to them almost in a way that's family-like. But the Ten of Swords can also be interpreted, which is interesting and perhaps provides some food for thought rather. The Ten of Cups, excuse me, can also represent a transitional state of happiness. Possibly you used to be happier with this position than you are now, and perhaps you feel like you've gotten everything out of it that you can. I kind of sense that about your reading, and perhaps it's because you see this job as only having been a means to an end, as only being a source of good money for you and allowing you to take care of those practical necessities, but it doesn't inspire you in any real way. When it does, the inspiration is very fleeting, I think. And so the Hierophant can also represent that too, that what you are looking for is something that is going to inspire you more long term and more consistently than something that just kind of happens in spurts. The Eight of Wands is such an ambiguous card in almost any reading, but I think that in general, for you, it can represent a situation that comes in bursts, and being the only source of fire in your reading too, I think is very interesting, because it represents in that case your energy source and what type of real creative energy is being added to the situation by any source. And in this case, the source, I believe, is you, predominantly. And it does represent a kind of passing, very transitory little lightning bolt, a little just a zap of energy, if you will. And it doesn't represent anything that is very long term. And perhaps, on another level, this is not a career choice that you envisioned yourself doing for a very long time. Maybe that has something to do with this as well. But I think that contrasts so heavily with the Hierophant, which is what your higher self is trying to guide you to. Now, the other interesting thing, too, is that you also have some elements of Venus here. And Venus also kind of ties into your Queen of Swords for your overall persona in this situation. Because the Queen of Swords is someone who communicates emotion well, as we were saying at the beginning of this reading, but she's crossed by adjustment, which is ruled by Venus, and crowning her is the Hierophant, which is Taurus, also ruled by Venus. So you have the two Venus signs of the zodiac here, which is interesting to me, and I think is a subtle undercurrent here of, feeling feeling good about your job is important to you, and I don't mean feeling good because of course there are many ways a job can make us feel good, either in terms of accolades or the money we make. It's different for everyone, but for you, I think it's a very different kind of happiness that you're looking for, and it's a more fulfilling happiness. You aren't going to be satisfied by a career that's just based on making money. So perhaps it is not a bad idea for you to consider some different alternatives. But I don't know your hopes and fears. Let's continue on here before I kind of try to wrap this up, because that Eight of Swords in your overall outcome keeps giving me the hairy eyeball. The Eight of Cups is in your hopes and fears section, and either your hope is kind of exhausted and you don't really believe that you could get anywhere else than here, where you are now, or you are afraid of relegating yourself to a kind of obscurity and a kind of boredom and a kind of ho-hum that would dominate your life. I think that's also important too. So I think, as part of your question, as far as dealing with something that isn't going to take up a whole lot of your life, I think the fact of the matter is that if you really do want to change this part of your life, you do need to let it kind of dominate your life for a while, to get it off the ground, to get yourself shifted. And I think that isn't going to be a bad thing. I think you're actually going to feel refreshed by doing that, because that would provide you with more of that nourishment that you need. In the Bible we hear about how you cannot live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from God and all that, which is to say that you can't get through life with just the basic necessities. Everyone requires something that is a little more spiritually fulfilling, and I think for you that is particularly important given this situation and the nature of your question. So since what you're doing right now doesn't really do that for you, and does it in a way that isn't particularly fulfilling, your cup is filled and sort of dumped out every so often, and you're kind of unable to keep your cup full. And I think the Hierophant and pursuing something more like that would allow you to find greater consistency in that. And would also allow you to express, I think, your genuine interest in helping people and feeling good about helping people. I don't think that you could ever be in a position or in a type of job where you aren't helping people in some way. I do sense that that's important to you, particularly in your Princess of Cups card, which is in your environmental aspects, or how other people are interpreting you and your energy. And since you have the Queen of Swords in your overall situation, I would say that the Princess of Cups is representing an avatar of you or an expression of you, and I do think that other people see you as a very sincere, sweet, and helpful person, someone who really takes into consideration the well-being of others and is willing to make small sacrifices for other people, and just you're a very expressive person, and you do have a very you are connected to your emotional center, which is important. particularly being a man, because men are really terrible with that. And so I think it's good that you feel more connected with that. And I think, in some ways too, communicating that is a big part of the Hierophant. Whatever your internal source of spiritual joy is, because I think the Princess of Cups also kind of deals with that. She represents this very pure spiritual zeal and joy and rapture that one feels when you're doing good work. When you're doing the work of the Spirit, that's what it feels like. And I think the Hierophant is an attempt to communicate to other people that reality, and to express what the benefits of what you've learned by doing that, by trying to connect to that more internal part of yourself. It's so typical, particularly for American men, to just focus on here and now practical stuff, and they are very rarely introspective, and very rarely do they really think about things like emotion. And whereas you, I don't feel, are quite like that, which is great. However, the one thing I may say is that sometimes having an emotional personality does render us a little less effective, and myself included. I'm an emotional type as well, and so sometimes I find that my emotions get in the way of my judgment or my ability to really make decisions, or really act on something, especially because I'm so afraid of what the repercussions of that decision may be, or that action. And part of that is because I don't want to hurt anyone. And I think perhaps an aspect of that is here with you as well, just because your overall outcome, just to finally return to that, is the Eight of Swords. And the Eight of Swords tells me that, in the long run, you are going to remain stuck, just because you're going to be too distracted by other things. And either those could be emotions, or those responsibilities that we were talking about of mundane life. Unfortunately, they still exist. Whether they're truly what is important or not, they do still exist, and we do still have to deal with them, obviously. But I just see you as not really being able to make a clear decision one way or the other about this situation. And I don't think it's because necessarily your heart isn't in the right place, but I think it's just this sense of distraction. So if you can work to clear that out, and move past whatever. The other aspect of this too is that the Three of Swords, I just could also be proved to become a block for you. I think whatever sadness is coming your way, whatever sense of separation and loss you are, that is starting to manifest in your life, that we need to watch out for. In the long run, it does have the potential to add to that Eight of Swords the energy that you have in your overall outcome, the sense of confusion and clutter, and not really being able to escape whatever emotional or mental prison you have been put in, and have partially constructed, of your own will by accident. We all do it in different ways. So I think this is a very interesting reading, and I think that there's a lot here to think about for you. I think it's going to take time for you to figure out how to really manifest better in your life this will to teach other people and help other people. I think that's going to take you some time. But I do think that it's an important aspect of your life that's going to continue to stay with you, and is going to continue to affect you, and is definitely going to continue to lead you in different ways. And so continue to trust that, and continue to look for small ways and small opportunities for now to explore that in other areas of your life. It is possible to lead a life that is practical on one hand for your job, and a life that is, on the other hand, more more extracurricular, if you will, you know, not to diminish it in its importance or anything, but you know, obviously we all need to make money to survive, and you're no exception, obviously. And I think that it's going to be important for you to, for a while, to stay in the situation you're in, for one reason or another. Unless you are able, unless an opportunity does come and you're able to put 110% into it. Um, but I'm not sure that if you are unable to, if you hold back in any way, I don't know that it's going to quite work out. I mean, who knows? It could. This reading doesn't quite address that. It really only says that this is a decision that is not going to be resolved for you for a while, and is going to be something that you think about for a long time. You know, but it definitely tells me the important elements that it isn't a bad idea for you at the same time in the long run. That more spiritual teacher role, I think, does fit your personality a little bit better. You know, so I do wish you luck with this. I will be moving on now to your relationship based reading. And I hope that this helped. I don't. I'm sure it wasn't exactly what you had hoped necessarily to hear, but I do hope that it was at least helpful and accurate and all that. So let me know if you what you think of that. Any feedback is appreciated. All right, that's about all I have for this. Let me take one last look. Yeah, no, that is about it. That is it. You do have a lot of the number 8, which is also interesting. You have tons of Mercury in here. And as I was saying before, you have tons of Mercury. And that just really solidifies the idea that all of this does boil down to communication and self-expression. Expression, just writing and teaching and learning is a big part of all of this, you know. And I don't think it's saying that you aren't doing that now, but you're not doing it in a way that is necessarily fulfilling for you, which is a bummer. But I do think, you know, there are other ways for you to find out how to make that happen for yourself. I think you just have to continue to try to organize things, keep things well organized, in a sense. I think that if you can manage that sort of, as I was saying before, that kind of separation of career and other things that you do, and passions and all that, I think if you can manage that kind of organization, that could also be something that could help you, particularly in times of clutter and confusion. I think your ability to organize things is also important here, given the 6 of Swords on the bottom of your deck. Anywho, I believe that's it. So I hope that this helped, and thank you again, and I will do your relationship reading next. All right, thank you, Brian.